The ancient monuments of Cthar cast long shadows across the rusty soil as Dr. Eris Thorne carefully brushed dust from the carved symbols. Sweat trickled down his temple despite the environmental controls of his field suit. 3 weeks into his research expedition, and he'd already cataloged more linguistic variations than his entire team had anticipated finding on this frontier planet. Fascinating, he whispered, capturing another image with his scanner. This dialect shares phonetic markers with at least 3 other star systems, but the symbolic structure is entirely unique. The young cosmic linguist had come to Cthar chasing legends of a civilization whose language might have been the missing link between several ancient cultures. Unlike many of his colleagues who sought isolation in their fieldwork, Eris craved connection. The threads that bound sentient beings across time and space through the evolution of communication. He straightened, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension from hours of crouching. The landscape around him was harsh, but hauntingly beautiful. Rust-colored canyons, twisted rock formations, and sparse vegetation that shimmered with an almost metallic quality. In the distance, the industrial silhouette of a Galactic Resource Corporation outpost marred the horizon, a stark reminder of the tensions simmering on Cthar. The planet had become a contested territory. GRC claimed mining rights across vast regions, while the native Zaltar, a reclusive, spiritually attuned species, fought to protect their ancestral lands. Eris had secured permission from both sides for his academic research, though the fragile peace made his work precarious. His scanner beeped, indicating it had detected another potential artifact. Following the signal, Eris moved deeper into the canyon, noting how the rock walls began to display more intricate carvings. The symbols grew denser, more complex, unlike anything he'd seen before. "This can't be right," he muttered, checking his navigation system. He was entering a restricted zone, a sacred site according to his Zaltar-approved maps. He hesitated, knowing he should turn back, but the linguistic patterns were evolving before his eyes, becoming more consistent, more significant. Just a quick look, he told himself. For science. As he rounded a corner, the canyon opened into a small circular clearing dominated by a structure that made him catch his breath. A temple, or something like it, carved directly into the living rock. Spiraling columns supported a domed ceiling inlaid with crystalline materials that caught the fading sunlight, casting prismatic patterns across the ground. But it wasn't the architecture that made Eris freeze in place. It was the figure stumbling toward the temple entrance. A Zaltar female, her silvery skin marred with what appeared to be burns or wounds, her delicate frame hunched in evident pain. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit echoed through the canyon, harsh voices calling in the ancient Zaltar tongue. The wounded Zaltar spotted him and faltered, her large, faceted eyes widening with fear and then, strangely, calculation. She straightened slightly, seeming to make a decision. "You," she said in halting standard. "Come. Now." Before Eris could respond, she had grasped his wrist with surprising strength and was pulling him toward the temple entrance. "Wait, I can't. This is a restricted area," he protested, even as he found himself following. Something about her desperation compelled him. "I'm Dr. Eris Thorne, linguistic researcher. Are you injured? I have medical supplies." "No time," she hissed, dragging him into the cool shadows of the temple. "They come. They must not find." She gestured vaguely at the temple interior, a space dominated by a central pedestal bearing what looked like a crystalline artifact. The pursuing voices grew louder. The Zaltar woman's face contorted with pain and determination. "My name Lyra Vell," she said quickly. "Guardian of the ancestral heart." She nodded toward the crystal. "They will kill for it. Weaponized sacred power." Eris's academic interest was instantly overwhelmed by concern. "Let me help you contact the authorities, or—" Lyra Vell cut him off with a harsh laugh. "Authorities? Some work with destroyers. Others fear Zaltar purists." She looked at him with frightening intensity. "Your mind? Strange. Compatible. You will do." "Do for what?" Eris asked, an uneasy feeling spreading through his chest. Instead of answering, Lyravel pulled him toward the pedestal. The crystal at its center pulsed with an inner light that seemed to respond to her proximity. "Wait," Eris began, but it was too late. Lyravel placed her hand on the crystal, then grabbed Eris's wrist and forced his palm against the cool surface. A surge of energy jolted through him, bringing him to his knees. The world dissolved into blinding light, an overwhelming sensation. Images flooded his consciousness, star maps, ancient rituals, faces of Zaltar elders, and something else. The distinct impression of another mind touching his own. Lyravel's presence, unmistakable and alien, reached into his thoughts. When Eris regained awareness, he was lying on the stone floor, his entire body tingling as though with electrical aftershocks. On his right wrist, a faint, iridescent pattern had appeared, a complex symbol that seemed to move subtly, like liquid under his skin. The same mark shimmered on Lyravel's wrist as she leaned over him, her expression a mixture of relief and grim satisfaction. Eris tried to speak, but his throat felt raw. What did you do to me?" "Soul tether," she said, her voice somehow both inside and outside his head. "Ancient bond. Sacred protection." As Eris struggled to sit up, he became aware of something utterly alien, a presence in his mind, emotions that weren't his own. Exhaustion, determination, fear. Lyravel's feelings bleeding into his consciousness. "You can't do this," he gasped, panic rising. "Remove it. Now." Lyravel shook her head, her expression hardening. "Leave? No, human. We're eternally bound now. You can't go anywhere." The words fell like a prison sentence. Eris stared at the alien woman who had, without consent or warning, chained him to her fate. Outside the temple, the voices of pursuers grew closer. Eris's first instinct was rage. He scrambled to his feet, putting distance between himself and Lyravel, though he immediately noticed that separation caused a strange discomfort, a pulling sensation in his mind. "Undo this," he demanded, gesturing at the mark on his wrist. "You have no right to bind me to anything." Lyravel stood with effort, still weakened from whatever had happened before their encounter. "Cannot undo," she said, her telepathic presence in his mind conveying concepts her limited standard couldn't express. "Soul tether is permanent. Emergency measure. Last resort." The pursuers' voices were alarmingly close now. Lyravel's fear spiked, and Eris felt it like a knife in his own chest, a disturbing empathic echo. "They come," she said urgently. "Zaltar purists. One ancestral heart to purge off-worlders." She pointed to the crystal, then to her head. "Knowledge of temple now locked in our bond. If one dies, knowledge transfers then fades. If both die, knowledge lost forever." Eris struggled to process both her words and the alien emotions flooding through him. "So you've turned me into a backup drive for your temple's location? Without asking?" "No choice," she insisted, moving toward a back entrance he hadn't noticed. "Gulme, we must go. Explain more when safe." Despite his outrage, Eris recognized the immediate danger. The emotions bleeding through their connection contained no deception. Lyravel genuinely believed they were in mortal danger. They slipped out through a narrow passage just as heavy footsteps entered the temple's main chamber. Lyravel led them through winding tunnels that seemed to be part natural, part carved, emerging eventually into a different section of the canyon system. As they moved, Eris became increasingly aware of other sensations bleeding through their connection. When Lyravel glanced at the sky, he momentarily saw colors he'd never perceived before, ultraviolet patterns invisible to human eyes. When she listened for pursuers, he felt her awareness extend beyond normal hearing, sensing vibrations through the stone itself. "What exactly is this soul tether?" he asked when they paused in a small alcove to rest. "I can feel you, see through your senses sometimes." Lyravel nodded. "Soul tether joins minds, bodies, energies. Ancient protection for sacred knowledge." Through their connection, images flowed. Zaltar guardians of the past, pairs joined in ritual, protecting secrets from invaders. Your brain structure, unusually receptive, compatible, rare for human. That doesn't give you the right to force this bond, Eris said bitterly. Would you prefer I let purists take heart, used to kill all humans on Cthar? Her anger flashed through their connection, hot and sharp. Or let corporation extract, weaponize energy, create spiritual weapon that destroys souls. The sincerity of her belief was unmistakable through their link. Eris felt his anger falter, replaced by a sickening realization of how deep he'd stumbled into Cthar's conflicts. They're still following, Lyravel said suddenly, her head tilting. Through their connection, Eris sensed what she did. Faint vibrations in the stone, the subtle disruption of energies that indicated pursuit. This way, she urged, leading them deeper into the wilderness. They traveled through the night, moving through landscapes that grew increasingly alien to Eris's human perceptions. Forests of crystalline vegetation that hummed with energy. Fields of what looked like moss, but responded to their footsteps with tiny electrical discharges. Through it all, the soul tether continued to evolve, strengthening with each passing hour. By dawn, Eris found he could understand fragments of Lyravel's thoughts without her speaking aloud. Her plans, her fears, her determination, all bleeding across their connection with increasing clarity. They paused at a stream to drink and rest. Lyravel demonstrated how to identify safe water sources by their energetic signatures, something Eris could now perceive as faint, bluish pulses. How far does this connection go? He asked, still disturbed by the invasion of his mental privacy, but increasingly fascinated from a linguistic perspective. Here was communication beyond language, direct conceptual transfer. Lyravel closed her eyes. Soul tether has levels. Now, basic emotions, some senses shared. Later, memories may bleed through. Deep thoughts. In ancient times, pairs could share skills, knowledge. And there's truly no way to break it. Her answer came not in words, but in images, the death of one leading to the temporary transfer of knowledge to the other, followed by its fading. The only permanent end. Great, Eris muttered. Either stay linked forever or die. Wonderful options. A sudden spike of alarm from Lyravel interrupted his self-pity. She froze, head tilted, listening to something beyond human perception. Down, she hissed, pulling him into the dense undergrowth. Moments later, a massive predator crashed through the vegetation nearby. A six-limbed creature with reflective scales and multiple sensing organs. It paused, clearly hunting them. Lyravel's mind touched his with startling clarity. Asterisk silence. It tracks heat and motion. Asterisk. Eris remained perfectly still, barely breathing. Through their connection, he felt Lyravel's concentration as she extended her consciousness toward the surrounding plants. With astonishment, he watched as the crystalline vegetation around them subtly shifted, creating a dispersion pattern that scattered their heat signatures. The predator snuffled in confusion, its sensors misled by the manipulated environment. After tense minutes that felt like hours, it moved on, seeking easier prey. When it was gone, Eris stared at Lyravel. You control the plants? Small connection, she explained. All Zalter have it. Soul tether makes stronger. She studied him. Your mind helped pattern. Calculation. Structure. Together, we deceived predator. Despite himself, Eris felt a flicker of pride. His analytical abilities, combined with her environmental connection, had created something neither could have accomplished alone. We should move, she said, rising. Both purists and corporation have tracking technology. Not safe here. As they traveled, Eris reluctantly recognized that survival required cooperation. He explained human research methods and technology to help avoid detection, while she taught him to interpret the natural signals of Cthar's ecosystem. By nightfall, they had reached the edge of a different region, a vast field of tall, swaying structures that resembled plants but contained elements Eris's scientific training told him were both organic and crystalline. What is this place? He asked, gazing at the gently glowing landscape. Dreaming fields, Lyravel explained. Beyond hidden settlement. Moderates. Not aligned with purists. Maybe help us. They navigated through the strange forest, the plants responding to Lyravel's presence by dimming their luminescence to provide cover. Eris noticed that he could now vaguely sense the plant consciousness as well, a faint, collective awareness that regarded them with ancient, patient curiosity. As dawn approached, they reached a hidden valley where structures blended seamlessly with the natural landscape. Zaltar dwellings constructed in harmony with the environment. Sentries spotted them immediately, approaching with weapons that appear to be grown rather than manufactured. Lyravel spoke rapidly in her native tongue. Eris was shocked to realize he understood fragments of it through their connection, enough to grasp that she was explaining their situation, identifying herself as a temple guardian and requesting sanctuary. The settlement leader, an elderly Zaltar with skin that had faded to nearly translucent, examined them both carefully, paying special attention to the matching marks on their wrists. Soul tether, he said in perfect standard, surprising Eris. Not seen in 3 generations. Desperate measure. He looked at Eris with multifaceted eyes that seemed to see through him. You did not choose this, human. No, Eris confirmed bitterly. The elder nodded. Yet fate has chosen you both. Kulme, rest, eat. We will speak more when you are recovered. They were given a small dwelling on the settlement's edge, a single room with 2 sleeping platforms and basic amenities. The walls were living material that regulated temperature and filtered air, technology that was biological rather than mechanical. After eating a meal of native foods that Eris found surprisingly palatable, he finally had the chance to properly confront Lyravel. You need to tell me everything, he insisted. The full truth about what this bond is, what it means, and what you expect to happen now. Lyravel sat cross-legged on her sleeping platform, her silver-toned skin catching the soft bioluminescent light of their shelter. Through their strengthening connection, Eris sensed her weariness, her conflict, but also her unwavering commitment to her duty. Soul tether is ancient protection, she began, both speaking aloud and projecting clearer concepts through their bond. In wars long past, knowledge of sacred sites, dangerous technologies, healing arts, all protected by binding guardians in pairs. If one captured or killed, knowledge transfers to other, then fade from universe if both die. Images accompanied her explanation. Historical events from Zaltar history, the evolution of their spiritual technology, the sacred responsibility of guardians. The ancestral heart you saw is not weapon, she continued. Is connection point. Amplifies Zaltar's spiritual energy, allows communion with planet, ecosystem. In right hands, brings harmony. In wrong hands, the images that flowed through their connection were horrifying. Zaltar purists using the heart's energy to unleash psychic attacks against off-worlders. Or worse, corporate scientists extracting and weaponizing the energy to create devices that could sever souls from bodies, creating empty shells to control. But why me? Eris demanded. There must have been other options. No time, no choice. Her frustration and desperation flared across their bond. Your mind structure, unusual. Most humans too. Solid. Closed. Your work with language, connection, makes mine more flexible. Compatible. Tether would fail with others. Eris paced the small room. So what's your plan? We spend the rest of our lives running? Hiding? I had a career, a life, research that mattered. Research still matters, she countered. Soul tether is oldest language. Direct meaning. No symbols needed. The connection you study, you live it now. That observation hit Eris hard. She was right. From a pure research perspective, the soul tether was the ultimate form of communication, a direct bridge between minds that transcended spoken or written language. Once safe, Lyravel continued. Maybe find way to secure heart. Then, options. What options? You said the tether is permanent. She hesitated, and through their connection, Eris sensed she was withholding something. Ancient texts speak of ways to redirect tether. Not break, but perhaps transfer to object, place. but dangerous, uncertain. Hope flared briefly in Eris's chest, only to be tempered by the uncertainty he felt from her. She genuinely didn't know if it was possible, only that legends suggested it might be. For now, we must protect knowledge, she insisted. If purists or a corporation find heart, suffering beyond imagining. That night, as they attempted to sleep in the alien dwelling, their dreams began to bleed together. Eris found himself walking through Lyravel's childhood memories, experiencing her initial calling as a temple guardian, feeling her dedication to her people, her fear as tensions on Cthar escalated. In turn, he sensed her moving through his memories of Earth, his fascination with ancient languages, his journey to the stars seeking connections between civilizations. They awoke simultaneously, staring at each other in the dim light with new understanding. You seek connection through words, she said softly. I seek connection through spirit. Not so different. Eris couldn't deny the observation, but still resented the forced intimacy. Different methods, different choices, he replied. You took my choice away. Her regret flowed through their bond, genuine but unapologetic. To save many lives, yes. Would do again. Their tense coexistence in the settlement lasted 3 days. The community treated them with cautious respect, though Eris noticed some members regarded him with suspicion, others with curiosity. Through their strengthening bond, Lyravel taught him rudimentary mental shielding, techniques to maintain some privacy of thought despite their connection. On the 4th day, everything fell apart. Eris had been attempting to contact his research vessel using a modified communicator borrowed from the settlement's limited technology. He intended only to let his team know he was alive, hoping to arrange eventual extraction once the situation stabilized. Lyravel found him as he was encoding the message. "What are you doing?" she demanded, though their connection had already told her. "I'm letting my people know I'm alive," he said defensively. "They'll be searching for me and lead purists or a corporation here." Her anger and fear exploded through their bond. "Signal can be tracked. I've masked the frequency," he argued, "and I'm not giving our location." The settlement's alarm system activated before their argument could escalate, a harmonic resonance that Eris felt in his bones. Through Lyravel's perceptions, he sensed what human technology couldn't detect: armed forces approaching from multiple directions. The elder appeared at their dwelling. "You've been betrayed," he said grimly. "Someone in settlement contacted purists, and it appears corporation monitors detected your signal attempt, human." "I told you." Lyravel's accusation struck Eris both verbally and mentally. "There's no time," the elder continued. "You must go. Northwest Passage leads to deep caverns. May find sanctuary there." As they hastily gathered supplies, Eris felt Lyravel's trust in him fracturing. The soul tether, which had begun to feel almost natural, now stretched painfully between them, their emotional discord creating psychic friction. They fled as the first sounds of conflict erupted in the settlement. Eris carried a pack of provisions while Lyravel navigated, her connection to the environment guiding them through nearly invisible paths. "I didn't know they could track it," Eris said after they'd put some distance between themselves and the settlement. "I was trying to find us a way out of this." "No way out," she replied coldly. "Only through." Their journey to the deep caverns was tense and silent, their connection constricted by mutual distrust. When they sensed pursuit, they worked together out of necessity, but the easy rhythm they'd begun to develop was shattered. The entrance to the caverns loomed before them as night fell, a vast, yawning darkness in the side of a mountain range. Lyravel hesitated at the threshold. "Dangerous place," she explained reluctantly. "Old energies. Unpredictable. Still better than being caught," Eris replied, his scientific curiosity stirring despite their situation. "What kind of energies?" Instead of answering aloud, she shared impressions through their bond. Ancient Zalter experiments with the planet's natural forces, abandoned when they proved too volatile. The deep caverns were the site of early attempts to create something like the ancestral heart, but the energies had become chaotic, self-sustaining. They entered cautiously, Lyravel's natural bioluminescence providing dim light. The cavern walls glistened with crystal formations that responded to their presence, pulsing faintly as they passed. Hours into their exploration, they reached a vast underground chamber where crystal formations created natural bridges over a chasm that seemed to have no bottom. The air itself felt charged, making Eris's hair stand on end. "We rest here," Lyravel decided. Difficult to track in this energy field. They set up a makeshift camp on a stable platform, eating silently from their rations. Through their strained bond, Eris sensed Lyravel's exhaustion and fear, but also her continued resolve. "I wasn't trying to betray you," he said finally. "I just wanted freedom," she finished for him. Return to old life. Her multifaceted eyes regarded him steadily. "Understand desire. Cannot happen now. There has to be a way." A distant sound echoed through the caverns, the unmistakable rhythm of organized movement. Pursuit had found them, even here. Lyravel stood, suddenly alert. "Not just purists," she whispered. "Corporation forces, too, coming from different directions." They were being herded, Eris realized with growing dread. The two factions, normally opposed, were coordinating to trap them between their forces. "We need to move higher," he suggested, pointing to the upper levels of the crystalline formations. "Get a defensive position." As they climbed, the energy in the cavern intensified. The crystals pulsed more rapidly, responding to their movement or perhaps to their shared distress through the soul tether. They reached a high platform just as the first purists entered the chamber from one side. Tall, severe-looking Zalter with modified biological weapons. From the opposite entrance came Corporation security forces in exo-armor, carrying energy weapons. "Nowhere left to run," came a voice from the pure side. A male Zalter stepped forward, his silver skin marked with ceremonial scarifications. "Guardian, return what is ours. The heart's location for your life." "And the human's life," added a corporation commander, stepping into view. Galactic Resource Corporation recognizes the value of the artifact. "We're prepared to offer sanctuary and compensation for cooperation." Trapped on their crystal platform, Eris and Lyravel stood back to back. Through their bond, strategies and assessments flowed rapidly between them, along with emotions too complex for words. "They will not honor promises," Lyravel projected to him. "Both want heart as weapon." "I know," Eris replied mentally, the technique coming more naturally in their danger. "But how do we fight both?" The purest leader raised his weapon. "The soul tether is an abomination. When used with an off-worlder, it must be severed." "The soul tether is precisely what interests us," countered the corporation commander. "Imagine the applications of such technology if it could be replicated." In that moment, through their connection, Eris felt something shift in Lyravel, a sudden realization. The heart is not the only power, she projected to him, her thoughts flowing with new urgency. This place, these crystals, they respond to soul tether energy. Images flashed between them. Ancient Zalter conducting experiments in these very caverns, attempting to create amplifiers for their natural spiritual connections. Experiments abandoned when they proved too powerful, too dangerous. "You want me to trust you completely," Eris realized, understanding what she was suggesting. "To fully open the tether between us." "Yes," she confirmed. "All barriers down. Complete synchronization. May control crystal energy. Create shield, escape. Or it might kill us both," he countered, sensing the risks through their connection. "Choose," she urged as weapons were raised below. "Trust or death." In that moment, facing enemies on both sides, Eris made his choice. Not out of resignation, but out of recognition of Lyravel's unwavering commitment to protecting others, of the genuine threat the heart posed in the wrong hands, and of the undeniable connection that had grown between them despite its forced beginning. "Show me how," he projected. Lyravel's consciousness surged toward his, no longer held back by either of their reservations. The soul tether flared between them, no longer a bond, but a fusion, complete synchronization of mind, perception, and energy. The world transformed around them. Eris saw/felt/understood the crystalline structures as Lyravel did, not as mineral formations, but as semi-sentient energy matrices, ancient technologies left to evolve on their own for centuries. And through him, Lyravel gained his human capacity for rapid pattern recognition, for systematic analysis of energy flows. Together, moving as one being with two bodies, they reached out to the crystal network surrounding them. The cavern erupted with light as the crystals responded, resonating with the harmonized frequency of their joined consciousness. Below, both factions shielded their eyes, weapons temporarily forgotten as the chamber filled with pulsing energy. The crystals, Eris/Lyravel, spoke with one voice. They were never weapons. They were meant to be bridges. With their combined will, they directed the crystal energy, not as an attack, but as a revelation. The light penetrated minds, temporarily connecting all present in the chamber in a network of shared consciousness. For precious seconds, every being there, purist, corporation soldier, Eris, and Lyravel, experienced each other's perspectives, motivations, fears, and hopes. The purists felt the corporation's clinical interest in exploitation. The soldiers experienced the Zalter fear of cultural annihilation. Both factions briefly understood the true nature of the ancestral heart. Not a weapon, but a connector, a means of harmony. And at the center, they all glimpsed the reality of the soul tether between Eris and Lyravel. Not an abomination or a technology to replicate, but a sacred trust born of necessity and growing into something neither had anticipated. The crystalline network overloaded seconds later, the connections severing as suddenly as they had formed. Several crystals shattered, releasing energy that created a natural barrier between the platform and their pursuers. In the confusion, Eris and Lyravel, still moving with synchronized purpose, escaped through a newly revealed passage, the crystal energies responding to their combined will to conceal their exit. They emerged kilometers away, on the far side of the mountain range, as dawn broke over Cthar. The complete soul fusion gradually faded, leaving them separate again, but forever changed. The soul tether between them now pulsed with strength and clarity, no longer an unwanted chain, but a connection they both understood. Exhausted, they collapsed on an overlook, watching the sun rise. What we did, Eris said finally, that revelation, changed everything. Lyravel finished. All who experienced will carry knowledge. Truth about heart, truth about connection, will be enough to stop them. She considered. Not stop. Slow. Change some minds. Others remained determined. Through their bond, Eris sensed a new possibility forming in her mind. You think we could do more with this connection? That what happened in the cavern was just the beginning. Soul tether at full potential. Ancient texts speak of capacity to bridge worlds, heal divisions. She looked at him. What we did was fraction of possibility. As they rested and planned, a new presence arrived. A sleek, official-looking craft bearing the insignia of the Galactic Mediation Council, a neutral body that oversaw disputes. On frontier worlds, an elegant mediator emerged. A being of indeterminate species whose diplomatic modifications allowed them to interface with various life forms. Dr. Eris Thorn and Guardian Lyravel, the mediator, greeted them. Events in the deep caverns have registered on multiple monitoring systems. A psychic event of unprecedented scale. Through their bond, Eris and Lyravel exchanged caution and hope. The Mediation Council was generally respected as neutral, but alliances could be complex. The Council requests your presence, the mediator continued, not to judge or detain, but to understand. What occurred has implications beyond Cthar. After careful consideration and silent communication through their bond, they agreed to accompany the mediator with conditions that they remain together and retain their freedom. The following weeks brought intense debriefings, negotiations, and decisions. The revelation experienced in the caverns had indeed changed the dynamic on Cthar. Several corporation officials who had directly experienced the connection had withdrawn, their most aggressive extraction plans. A faction of purists had broken away from their leader, seeking reconciliation with moderate Zaltar communities. The location of the ancestral heart remained secure in Eris and Lyravel's bond, but they proposed a compromise, supervised, limited access to the temple for both scientific study and spiritual practice, with safeguards against weaponization. The soul tether, Eris explained to the council, isn't just a protection mechanism. It's a model for what's possible between different species, different perspectives. Connection without dominance, Lyravel added. Understanding without assimilation. The council, recognizing the potential, granted them special diplomatic status, soul-tethered representatives with a mandate to explore the peaceful applications of their unique bond in mediating other frontier world conflicts. When the formalities concluded, Eris and Lyravel stood on the observation deck of the council station, looking down at Kthar's swirling surface. I never expected this outcome, Eris admitted. When you first bound us, I thought my life was over. Was over, Lyravel said with the slight humor he'd come to recognize through their bond. Old life. New one began. He smiled, acknowledging the truth of it. The council expects us to use this connection to demonstrate its potential across different worlds. Frightening, she admitted. Also, right. Through their bond flowed the certainty they both felt that the soul tether between them, forced into existence by desperate circumstances, had evolved into something neither could have imagined. Not just a protection for ancient knowledge, but a bridge between worlds. We still don't know its limits, Eris said, his researcher's curiosity fully engaged. What we did in the caverns, the full synchronization, we've barely explored what's possible. Lifetime to discover, Lyravel replied, her hand finding his, the soul tether marks on their wrists glowing faintly where they touched. The romantic aspect of their relationship had developed gradually, emerging from the deep understanding their connection provided. It wasn't the forced intimacy of the initial bond, but something that had grown naturally from shared experience, mutual respect, and a unique comprehension that only they could offer each other. Where should we begin? Eris asked, looking out at the stars beyond Kthar. Lyravel's response came both in words and in the warmth of her presence in his mind. Wherever path leads. Together, Eris thought back to that first moment in the temple, when she had declared with such certainty, "Leave? No, human. We're eternally bound now. You can't go anywhere." What had seemed like a prison sentence had become a gift beyond measure. A connection transcending language, transcending species, offering insights into the very nature of communication that he had spent his life pursuing. "I wouldn't want to go anywhere else," he said softly, the words carrying the full weight of his acceptance through their bond. Lyravel's multifaceted eyes reflected the starlight as she smiled. "Then we begin new journey. Not guardian and prisoner. Partners. Explorers." The soul tether between them pulsed with harmonious energy, no longer binding them against their will, but connecting them by choice. A bridge between worlds they would spend a lifetime crossing together.